If you want to stab an architect in the heart, tell him that his projects are destroying not only the place, but the planet. I'm a native of Brooklyn, New York. I was born there. I spent my childhood and through my college days, actually, in Brooklyn, New York. My father and mother were first-generation immigrant family. Our grandparents all came from the Middle East. We essentially lived in the park with our friends, and we spent 3/4 of our lives growing up on the basketball court. So at the end of the high school career, I was one of the best ball players in the city. I had no idea what architecture school was all about or what architecture was all about. When we first went into our first class, the instructor said, most of you probably will not make it through the first year. We're going to eliminate about 100 of you. And we're going, oh, gee. My first year, I squeaked by with a C-. By my sophomore year and junior year, I moved from C up to B- to B, and then by my senior year, I was an A student. But it wasn't easy, I'll tell you. There's always an edge in New York. When you're 5 or 6 years old, you start to develop that edge, and so I had that edge big time and always wanted to be the best. I was drafted by the New York Knicks, and that was quite an honor. To be drafted, in the pros was a big deal in New York. From there, come out with a degree, and I'm ready to go to the summer camp with the Knicks, and I get a draft notice for the Army. It was really eye-opening to know that there were other worlds outside of Brooklyn, New York, where I spent all that time. I'm working at Barnes' office, playing ball on the weekends, and a group of my friends said, we're going west. We're going to be leaving New York, and we're going out to California to make our fortunes and everything else. So I said, okay, I'll go with you guys. Let's do an exploratory trip. So I wrote to University of New Mexico, UCLA, and Berkeley. I send out a letter, and instantly, as soon as they get the letter, I get a call from University of New Mexico. Can you come teach tomorrow? It's the middle 70s, right? You know what's going on in the middle. There's a whole cultural shift in the US, like seismic shift. And the epicenter of the shift was Berkeley, California. Everybody wanted to teach at Berkeley. I said, what will I teach? Just like, what course would I take? Say, what would I teach? So he says, solar energy. I said, look, I don't know anything about solar energy. I know zero. After 2 years, we had figured out how to really apply solar energy to architecture. And at the end, you could hear a pin drop. There's complete silence. So I was giving talks here, at a conference there. I figured from my experience at Barnes' office in New York and everything else, it was time to open a practice. I wanted to practice now architecture. And so I opened the practice, and because of the book and the reputation that we had, the people who wanted to do that really progressive solar architecture came to us. And so we immediately got work. Friday afternoon, after lunch, the rest of the afternoon was a seminar on what I did for the solar stuff and architecture and everything else. This was really early on when we started the seminars, right? And the second, third day into the seminars, all of a sudden there were headlines that were coming up that the architects in the office were reading about. An SUV dealership in Denver was burnt down. People were starting to get a little radical on this climate change stuff. I'm reading The Limits to Growth, right? I remember this page that we discussed in my seminar, which was population growth and exponential growth. So what took from the beginning of time to do to 1970, so thousands and thousands of years, it took us to get to 3 billion. And it was on an exponential curve like this. So here's 3 billion. And they projected it up going like this. And they said in the next 30 years, if we keep on this exponential curve, we will double the population of the Earth, go to 6 billion people by the year 2000. So what took us from the beginning of time to do to 1970, we will do the same thing in 30 years. I said, that's not possible. And I get on my little computer, I type in population, the year 2000, 6 billion people. And I almost fell off my chair. We specify every material that goes into a building. Nobody tells us, should we make it out of steel or concrete? We determine if it's concrete or steel. We determine the spans. The client doesn't get involved in that. We determine pretty much everything. So I go in the industrial sector. It's a little sketchy, but I can figure out roughly. I pop that in the building sector. And I come out with this building sector that's half of the pie. There was no building sector, right? Everybody was focused on SUVs. We're burning down dealerships. So I go, whoa. I do it in the seminar and everybody is like, wow, how are we gonna get the word out? I said, well, we'll write an article. We put out the targets, and within 30 days, the American Institute of Architects is a huge organization. There were 60,000, then there are 90,000 members now. They don't move very fast because you've got a huge membership. Within a month, they adopt the targets. And energy consumption in the building sector in the US is going like this. The targets are issued in 2006 on a dime. It turns like this and levels out. Unbelievable that the community responded so quickly.